Venezuela, or pretty much anywhere else. If you live in Europe, that is fine. We also have a cool bonus today. This is for people who attend live. We have a retirement investing toolkit, including a calculator that I'm going to be also demonstrating during the workshop. We will be sharing the access at the end of the workshop. I also wanted to be really clear setting expectations because we have maybe 2 hours, maybe a little more together, including the Q&A. It's a nice amount of time, but it's not enough to take you from a complete beginner to an expert on every little topic about investing, right? So we will not be going in depth about specific investment strategies and how do you choose a specific ETF and how do you buy the ETF or manage your portfolio, right? Now we will focus specifically on retirement topics and 50 plus topics, like is it too late for you to start investing? How much money do you need in order to retire? In general, what are the best kinds of investments for retirement? How do you reduce risk as your age goes up? What are the best brokerages for retirement? And also, what are some of the biggest mistakes? And I'll show you how to audit your existing investments to check the fees to see if you are overpaying. So I think I'm going to go all out. I'll give as much as I can. I'm not going to hold anything back. But of course, there's a lot more practical steps that you might be curious about. So just full disclosure, we also have a full training that goes through all the practical steps with all the local country details across Europe. I'll explain that in the second half of the workshop. And those of you answering your question. Okay, so that's the plan. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Crosshill. You might have seen me on YouTube or somewhere else, but I'm also Toms Kreidsberg. So I'm European. I grew up poor in Latvia, in the former Soviet Union. Then I moved to America. I got a job at UBS on Wall Street. I used to work on the biggest trading floor in the world. And some years later, I moved back to Europe where I co-founded a pension fund. I became the CEO of this pension fund. So I was responsible for the life savings of tens of thousands of future retirees. It was a very stressful experience. It was an interesting experience. I learned a ton. And happily, we also got really good results for our clients. Like the first fund we ever started, it had the best results in the whole country for many years. And because of that, now the company, it is a bank and they have it's a public company trading on NASDAQ Baltic. It became really successful. Now, I'm not here to sell you anything from Indexo. I don't work there anymore, but that was a big part of my story where I first was responsible for investing retirement savings. And I worked with so many future retirees where I learned a lot of these skills and really understood this space a lot better than I used to. And today, my mission is to make investing easy for locals and expats who live across Europe. I've helped many thousands of Europeans over the age of 50 invest for their retirement, and that's why I'm here today. For example, there's Esther, a CEO from Spain, who said, "I went from fearing I'd have nothing when I retired to celebrating my growing investment account every month." Or there's Vincenzo. I really wanted to highlight him because his story parallels a lot of people I talked to. He said, at 50, I had money just sitting in the bank and I thought it was too late to do anything with it. Now, because of Tom's training, I found the courage to act. That money isn't sitting idle anymore, but growing. So I hope I can help do this for you today as well, if you're feeling like it might be too late. Or there was Uta Higgs from Portugal who said, starting Tom's training at 62 made me realize what I'd been missing out on, but not all is lost. And this is really true. Beyond growing capital, Tom also covers how to protect it and avoid costly mistakes. And we'll talk about that today. Why, even if you start in your 60s, it is often not too late. Sometimes it's too late. We'll talk about that as well, but usually it is not. And we'll talk about why that is. But before we dive into that, one of the most important prerequisites for you to be successful at retirement investing is that you have a compelling vision. You have something that moves you, that motivates you to put money aside today and multiply it and invest it. So think about it and put in the chat, like, what would you like your retirement to look like? Like, what is it that you want your money to buy? Is it travel? Is it helping your kids? Is it a nicer place to live or nicer food? What is it like? Is it just peace of mind? What is the kind of emotional reason? Like, why do you want extra retirement savings above what the government pension might be? Like, why does it matter? Somebody said wine, pizza, and Italy, but they wrote directly to me, so other people cannot see it. Alexander said travel. Pavel said health, security. Easel said, keep same living standard. Yeah. Adam said security, keep my independence, legacy minded, a relaxed lifestyle, freedom, travel, peace of mind, and leave something to my kids. Peace of mind, comfort, health, help our daughter. A lot of peace of mind. I think it's a great goal, yeah, to be able to not stress about money when you're older. Travel, help my family, stop work, being debt free, not enough money. Buy medicine. That is important. Money to help my kids and peace of mind. Security and being able to be generous, living comfortably, maintaining lifestyle and looking after kids. All right. So I think it's very important. Like as long as you have a clear vision, you can do this. The issue starts when people don't have a clear vision and then they don't get motivated and they keep delaying for years, and then of course nothing happens. Now, in my view, here in Europe, we have a problem. In fact, we have multiple problems with retirement, and these problems make it very important that we are putting money aside and we are multiplying it. So there's a few myths that I've encountered. One myth, this is especially popular in Eastern Europe. I don't know if in Western Europe you get it as well, but in Eastern Europe, a lot of people will tell you, oh, I'm not even going to live to retirement. Why should I care about retirement? I'm not even going to live to retirement. People die early. I don't need to worry about it. And look, I mean, realistically, some of us statistically might not make it to retirement, but the same statistics tell us that most of us will. So according to EU data, 84% of men and 92% of women will live to 65 plus. And of course, especially if your health is more or less decent, if you're not, in a totally bad space, it's very, very likely you will live to 65. And then, according to OECD data, so in developed countries, people who reach the age of 65 live another 19.5 years on average. Some people might live another 30 years. Some people maybe only live 10 years, but on average, another roughly 20 years is, what you can kind of hope for or plan for, right? So we do live to retirement, and then we spend quite a long time in retirement, and this is useful to keep in mind. The second myth depends from country to country and group to group, but sometimes people just assume that here in Europe, the government will take care of older people and that, everything will be fine because we have the state pension. And to some extent, it is true, but to some extent. Now, because ideally, when you do surveys of people and when you talk to retirement experts, they say, well, in order to keep a similar lifestyle, your pension should cover 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income. Not 100%, because you no longer need to be saving in retirement. And also because maybe you don't need as many expensive clothes because you're not going to the office. Maybe you don't spend money on commuting. Maybe you have more free time to cook, so you don't need to order in so much, right? So there are things where you can normally reduce your spending, but like 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income is considered like ideal. That is a good level to aim for. And if you look at actual state pensions across Europe, well, there are a few countries where you're getting 70 to 80%, but the range is from like 35% to 80%. And it's not improving. It is getting worse because Europe is getting older. There are more and more old people. There are fewer and fewer taxpayers, young people. And that means those replacement rates are projected to go down. And the other thing that is happening is, of course, retirement age is not just projected to go up, it is going up. In Denmark, they already raised it to 70, and this is going to keep happening in many different countries. I mean, there are people protest this, there are big marches in the street and everything, but it's hard to resist it just because of the math. If we have so many old people that are going to be there and fewer young people, then retirement age will have to go up in order to make the whole financial system not collapse, so that we don't have enormous taxes and which makes the whole economy stop, right? So we cannot count too much on this government pension, on these state pensions. Yes, they will be there. Don't ignore them. They will be very important, but they might not be as plentiful as we would hope. The other thing to keep in mind is that we talked about life expectancy at 65, where on average people live another 20 years more or less. But there's a separate data from Eurostat, which says that the healthy life expectancy is like 9.5 years, a little under 10 years. So if you get to 65, you can expect maybe 10 healthy years. And this means a couple different things. It means, first of all, that if you want to be traveling and doing all these other things, you might want to retire a bit early so you can enjoy that. And the other thing it means that, of course, also you need, like people mentioned medicine in the chat, you also need financial resources for medical care. I mean, in many European countries, we do have good coverage from the government, but always if you have more resources, you have some nicer conditions, right? So this is another thing to consider. So what I conclude when I look at this picture is that I need to be funding at least part of my own retirement. And if possible, maybe retire a few years early. I'm not a big believer of retiring at like 45 or 50. Most people I talk to who retire super early, they're too bored and they go back to work, right? But I think if you have a plan for traveling and being with your grandkids, and there can be a big difference retiring at 62 or 65. Those few extra years while you have good health can be a real benefit. So if it's possible, I think it can be a good goal. Okay, and then now we get to another big myth that I want to address today, which is the myth that I'm too old to start investing. And now, to be clear, this is not a myth for everybody. Unfortunately, in some cases, it is true. But for the majority of people, the great majority of people that I talk to, it is not true. So when is this myth true? Well, this myth is true if you are about to retire or you are retired and you have zero savings. So unfortunately, investing only works when you have something to invest. So either you need pre-existing savings if you are retired, so let's say tens of thousands or more, or you need to have some years so you can save money. So if you are already about to retire or you are retired and you have zero savings, unfortunately, investing cannot do much for you unless you are living very frugally and you're going to save and invest part of your state pension. I guess that is possible, but otherwise, it is too late, right? But most people who come to me, they are not in that situation. They are in one of two other situations. So very, very typical. I work with a lot of people who are maybe in their 50s, somewhere between 50 and 60, and you have modest savings. Maybe it's 5, 10,000, 20, 30, 50,000, let's say under 100,000. So relatively modest in terms of like retirement savings. But they still have years until retirement, and they are able to save a few €100 per month. And in this case, it's definitely not too late. And I want to run a really simple kind of calculator example to kind of explain that. So let me just switch my screen to a Google Sheet calculator that I have here. So let's take a kind of pretty moderate example. So let's say you're 55 years old, so you've got 10 years to retirement. And let's say you've got some savings, but not too much, maybe 30,000, okay? And then let's say, okay, you're in your 50s, so you have a good career, your children are grown up, so you don't have to spend as much on them. Maybe you can put aside €500 a month. And then we're going to adjust this for inflation every year, so maybe 3% more every year, okay? Now, first of all, if you don't invest this money, then you just put this money aside for the next 10 years, you would end up with something like €99,000. Although, if you're not investing, it's very possible you will also not put the money aside and just spend it. So realistically, you might not even have that, right? But if you're not investing it, if you're just putting this money aside for the next 10 years, just by the virtue of putting more aside for 10 years, you would end up with almost 100,000. And that's already a big difference between not doing anything and putting money aside. I mean, 100,000, that's a lot of vacations, right? That's a lot of trips you could take during your retirement on top of your state pension, which hopefully covers your cost of living. But then if you get, let's say, a modest sort of return, so maybe 6% per year from your investments, then you would end up with 146,000. Now, to be clear, this is not €1,000,000. You're not like a millionaire. You're not going to be swimming in cash. It's very obvious, right? But 6% per year is not some kind of crazy profit. Like the long-term average in the stock market is 9%, right? 6% is pretty moderate. And with this kind of return, like you have almost half as much, like you get an extra 47,000 when you retire. Not guaranteed, but reasonable. right? So again, when you think about it, the early years in your retirement are the years when you will be able to travel and have fun, right? You're not going to be traveling for 30 years. Realistically, maybe the first 10 years. So let's say you had an extra 47,000 and you divide that by 10, that's an extra 4,000 every year plus, right? That would be a pretty nice kind of travel budget, right? So I mean, clearly it makes sense to be investing, right? It is not too late. It is too late to get to a million. Yes, that is true, but it is not too late to be investing and to get significant benefit. So I think this is something people confuse. They assume that if I cannot get to a million and have huge passive income, then that's not worth it. But in my view, it is worth it. Let me ask you in the chat: does this make sense? Is this logic making sense? So people get confused. They think they set very big goals, then they are disappointed that they cannot reach such goals and they say it's pointless. But in reality, even if you could add some tens of thousands, it still makes, retirement a lot more pleasant. Okay. Yeah, looks like that makes sense. Somebody said taxes. Yes, we'll talk about taxes as well. Very good. Every little investment fills the baskets, somebody. Okay. Yeah. So it's just the same principle. Like more is better, somebody said in the chat. That's right. Yeah. We might not get to a perfect outcome, but we can get to a better outcome, right? And better is always better than worse, right? Okay, so that's one scenario. Somebody in their 50s who has some time, 5 to 10 years, right? And you can still put money aside, you can still get a benefit. But then there's another part to this, which is that people think that if I'm 59 years old, I have only 6 years until, investing stops making sense. I have 6 years to invest. But this is actually not true. Your money does not retire when you do. Just because you're going to retire at 65 does not mean your money retires at 65, right? And this is why the second scenario, like let's say you are 60 plus, but you have 50,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 saved. It is absolutely not too late for you to be investing because you have an expected 20 years in retirement. And throughout that period, your money can keep working. This is something people like really underestimate because I mean, let's say that previous scenario, right? You hit retirement with 150,000 and now you're just going to keep it in the bank. I mean, just think about inflation. Let's say we have a moderate inflation of, am I sharing the right thing? I'm not sharing the right thing. Sorry, I'm going back to my slides and I didn't share the slides. Okay, so yeah, so I was looking at this other scenario, right? So it's also not too late if you are 60 plus and you have savings. Because let's say you've got 100,000 saved and you've got moderate inflation of 3% per year. So 3% inflation on 100,000 means you're losing 3,000 euros in value every year. So that's like a vacation that you lose in 1 year, and if you multiply that by 5 years, it's like a modest car that is gone just because you're not doing anything with the money. It is losing value, right? Sometimes people tell me, I'm 60. There's no time for compound interest to work for me. You've heard about compound interest. If you invest for many years, the profits add up, right? But what people don't realize is that compound interest works in both directions. Inflation also compounds. So if you leave your money just sitting there for 20 years, inflation is going to compound and it's going to eat a third to a half of the value just because you didn't do anything with the money, right? So you've got inflation to think about. Plus, of course, you're spending the money down. So if you're just spending the money down, basically it goes to zero if you're not investing it in like a straight line, right? So the idea when you're in your 60s or in retirement is that you invest your money to cover inflation and then hopefully make the savings last longer. So you make it, earn a little above inflation, hopefully. You make the savings grow and you make it last longer, yeah, so that you can hopefully go for the rest of your retirement without running out. So that is why we invest in the second scenario. Yeah, so in these two scenarios, you're in your 50s and you have time, or you're in your 60s and you have savings. In both cases, investing makes sense. The only time when it does not make sense is if you're close to 65 or plus and you don't have any savings. Then unfortunately, then it really can be too late. But in those other cases, it is not too late. Okay, so it's really important to understand that. Now we can then move on to kind of the meat of today's training. And I kept putting more slides in. I've got a ton of material, so I hope your time. I hope you're excited for this. We're going to go through a lot. So we'll look at some more numbers, how much you need to retire and how much you need to invest today. We'll look at the most dangerous mistakes when investing for retirement. We'll look at when to use pension products as part of your strategy, and this is going to address the tax issue that somebody mentioned. We'll also talk about like what are the kind of best investments for your retirement strategy and how they can reduce risk and things like that. Okay. So let's look at this first one. How much do you need in order to retire, and how much should you be investing today to get there? So let's I'm gonna go walk you through the kind of classic calculation, the classic way people look at it, with the immediately giving you the warning that in many cases this is not actually practical. It's only practical for some people, but I think it's useful to understand the math, right? So let's say you want to use your retirement savings as a source of passive income for many decades, right? So then how much do you need to generate a certain amount of passive income in your retirement, and how much do you need to invest today to get there? Well, you figure it out by first figuring out what is the target passive income, like how much do you want per month from your investments? Is it 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? What is it that you need per month from your investments? Then you figure out, okay, you figure out how much monthly income you need. Then you figure out how much your state pension will cover. So you can take that away. And then the difference is what you need from your investments, right? So you figure out, I need to spend, let's say, 3,000 euros per month. 2,000 will be the pension. I need 1,000 from my investments, right? So if I need 1,000 from my investments, I need to know how much do I need invested so that I can take out 1,000 per month and not run out of money. And the starting point that people usually start with is the state withdrawal rate, something like 4%. And later we'll talk about why 4% is not perfect and there are some complications. But for now, for this initial calculation, we will make the 4% assumption. So the idea is if you spend down 4% of your portfolio per year, it's a reasonably safe amount to take out. So you can easily calculate how much money you need. You just take the annual amount that you need and you multiply it by 25. Okay? Because 4 times 25 is 100. If it seems confusing, I'll show you the exact numbers, then you'll understand. Yeah. So basically, we're going to assume that of the retirement pot that you have, you're going to take 4% every year. And that way we can figure out how big your pot needs to be in order to support your spending. For example, if you want to spend 40,000 per year from your investments, which would be a lot, so 40,000 on top of your state pension, then you would need 40,000 times 25. You would need 1,000,000 invested. That's how the math works, right? So this is why I said in many cases this is not going to really be relevant, because if you are in your 50s and you have very little saved, you're likely not going to get to 1,000,000 or 500,000. It's just too much. And so instead of this, I would think instead of passive income, I would think this is an extra budget for travel. This is an extra budget for experiences, not necessarily like a passive income for 30 years, right? But if you have larger savings, then you can aim for this where you have a large pot, and then you're going to be taking passive income for decades, right? So how do you do the math? Well, let's do a case study here where somebody's 50 years old. They've been saving and investing already. They have 150,000 in the bank, and they want retirement income that is equal to 70% of their salary. So I'll go back to my calculator and let's just play with the numbers, how these numbers work. So, and by the way, yes, you're going to have this sheet at the end, so you can play with your own numbers as well. So this guy, he has 15 years until retirement. Let's say, he's a relatively successful professional. If he's been able to save 150,000, let's say his net salary after taxes is 4,000 euros. Let's say we expect 3% inflation. He wants target retirement income of 70% of his final salary, and let's say his pension will cover half. So his pension will cover 2,000, right? And we're going to have this 25 multiplier that we just discussed. So what this means. So if his salary right now is 4,000 and there's 3% inflation per year, when he retires, his salary will be like 6,000 because, with inflation it's going to go up. So his target retirement income would be 70% of 6,000. That would be 4.4 thousand. That's how much he wants to get every month, right? Now his expected pension income would be roughly 3,000. Again, it goes up with inflation. So he needs 1,200 monthly in order, from his investments in order to reach his desired goal. And so if he needs 1,200 monthly, he needs 374,000 in his retirement account invested, right? So today he has 150,000, he needs 374,000. So you'll be able to use the sheet, walk through your own scenario and see, okay, if I want this amount of income, this is my expected pension, this is how much I need to have, right? And then you go ahead and do the math. Okay, so he's got 15 years until retirement, he's got 150,000 right now. Let's say he doesn't put any money aside at all. If he earns 6% per year on his money, well, he needs 373 and he would have 359. So very close. So even with a modest return, he wouldn't need much. Maybe if he puts 100 euros aside, he's likely to hit it. Of course, we could be even more conservative and assume an even lower return. And then maybe, to be sure, maybe he wants to, put aside 200 or 300 a month, right? But so because he already has a large starting amount, he can reach a larger pot, which will give him significant passive income for the rest of his life. Okay, so this is a calculation that is useful, more useful for people maybe either in their early 50s who have a lot of time, or especially for people who already they hit their 50s with maybe 6 figures plus, and then it's realistic to grow a larger pot and have like this kind of regular passive income. Tell me in the chat if this is making sense. I know this was a lot of numbers. This could be a little confusing. Do you understand the distinction? If you're in your 50s and you have very little and maybe not so much time, then you think, how do I make an extra budget that is like, for travel or other needs? If I'm hitting 50s with 6 figures, then it's realistic to grow a large pot, and then we're going to take passive income every month for a long time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Deb says it makes sense, but I'll never make 6 figures. Right. So in that case, you focus on the first scenario, which is you focus on, given my situation, what can I reach? Because there's still a difference between hitting 65 with 70K versus 50K versus 30K, right? So you do as much as possible. Elena says there's no profit tax in the calculation. Absolutely, yes. Tax comes on top of that, and that's why later on we'll talk about retirement products, which in many cases help you eliminate or significantly reduce the tax impact. So that has to be taken into account, but every country has different tax rules. So there is no single answer that I could give here for tax. Alessandro says, I'm 62 with 400,000. Is that enough? It depends on what you need. So that's why I'll share this calculator at the end where you can put in your own numbers, how much income you need, how much income you want, and then you can see what those numbers can do for you. But okay, let's move on because I don't want to get caught up here. So hopefully just understand the basic principle. If you have a more modest amount of savings, then just aim to maximize whatever you have. If you have a larger amount that is available and you have more time, then you can build really large portfolio, like 6 figures, and that can be enough to support like very significant passive income. And of course, there's another case study or a situation, which is if you are already retired, like a lot of my students are already retired, and maybe you have 300, 400,000, maybe some people have 1 million, right? From hard work and an inheritance and a house sale, then your focus is not building it, it's preserving it, making sure it lasts. Because, for example, on 300,000, you're losing 6,000 to 9,000 per year just to inflation. So obviously you need to be investing it and to make it stretch longer. Okay, all right. Here's the slide that everybody was asking about. Yes, we must also consider taxes, but we will address that a bit later. We'll look at pension products, and the tax rules are different in every country. So this is something you will have to take into account when you do your own numbers. But hopefully this gives you a better sense of how to think about the numbers, and then you'll have the sheet to play with at the end. Then we can move on to the second part, second point today, which is what are the most dangerous mistakes to make when you're investing for retirement? Like what are the things that I see prevent people from having enough to retire and then making the money last through retirement? Well, there's quite a few. So the first big mistake is under investing. I mean, that should be obvious. It's just not investing enough. And this either happens because people find investing confusing and intimidating, or because people are worried. You have worked hard to build savings, and you are worried that you will make one big mistake, and that's going to cost you a lot and set you back. And it's an understandable worry, but the problem is by trying to avoid risk in the market, we are guaranteed to have a huge risk, which is inflation devouring our money. So it is important to get past it and to get the money working for you instead of sitting in the bank. But that's why we're here today. The second mistake that I also see a lot is being too conservative. And this is a big mistake in Europe, especially because people think that conservative investments are always safe investments. For example, here's the trick question. Which do you think is a safer long-term investment, stocks or bonds? Actually, you can tell me in the chat, what do you think is safer, stocks or bonds? So a stock gives you part of a company, a bond is a loan. When you buy a bond, it's like you're lending money to a company or a government. So what is safer? Somebody said I shared. Oh, I'm so sorry. Today, I'm really not on top of the screen sharing game. I'm sharing the wrong screen. Yes. So which is a safer long-term investment, stocks or bonds? Tell me if I keep sharing the wrong screen. I don't know what's happening today. I usually don't do that. So hopefully now it's the okay. So here's the thing. Bonds, the price of bonds does not swing up and down very much. The price of stocks swings up and down a lot, and sometimes you have these massive crashes that are in the news. So in the short term, stocks are a lot more risky than bonds, and this is why people think bonds are much safer. And a lot of Europeans just hold their life savings in bonds. Like they think I'm just going to put everything in bonds and that's it. But the problem is bonds over the long term are much less profitable, and in many cases they're not enough to cover inflation. So there's a very strong argument to be made that for long-term investing, stocks are much safer. They are much more likely to beat inflation. In fact, there's been some recent research from like Professor Scott Cederberg, which suggests that if you had nerves of steel, if you never worried about the market going up and down, you should have everything in stocks. And it's a lot safer than having these like seemingly stable investments like bonds. I don't subscribe to that unless you're a professional investor. I think it's too risky. People freak out if you have these big swings. I think as you approach retirement, you will want lower risk investments like bonds as well, but it should not be everything in bonds, because if everything is in bonds, you will likely lose too much to inflation. Your money will just go down too early, and you will not be able to make the money last. Okay, so you need to be investing. Now, the way we usually handle it is that you reduce risk as you get older. So if you've got 15 plus years until retirement, usually you would put 100% of your savings into stocks, aside from a safety cushion that's sitting in the bank for emergencies. Then as you have this 0 to 15 year period, so the period we're talking about today, as retirement is approaching, you could start adding some lower risk investments to your portfolio. And this depends on how stressed you are. So if you are a very kind of conservative-minded person, maybe even at age 50, you're like 60% stocks, 40% bonds, like a lot of bonds. If you're a little more aggressive and happy to see okay with like the swings, you might have 100% in stocks until age 55 or 57, and then you might start adding bonds. But the point is, as you approach retirement, you start adding lower risk investments, because what you want to avoid is being 2 years from retirement and then there's a big financial crisis and you lose half your portfolio. So that's why you add lower risk investments. And then when you hit retirement, typically you might have like 50-50 stocks versus bonds, or 60-40 or 40-60. So roughly half and half. Never everything in bonds, never everything in stocks. You have a mix so that the stocks are there as a profit driver and the bonds are there to protect you from major crashes to make sure money is preserved. So even if there is a stock crash, well, a lot of your portfolio is still safe. You still have somewhere to take money from, okay? And you can wait out the crash until stocks recover and then keep going up. Because that's the point. Like over the long term, the stock market has been tremendously reliable. I mean, you're investing in hundreds of companies around the world where millions of people go to work every day and they keep working to make money. Over the long term, stocks usually do really well, but sometimes it can take some years. So that's why you have the bonds in the portfolio to kind of cushion those big swings. Yeah. So that's how you do it. Don't the mistake here was being over conservative. You don't want to have everything in low risk investments, but as you get older, you add more of those low risk investments. Okay. Third mistake, very common. I see this a lot. People get excited about investing. They maybe read about Warren Buffett or other famous investors, and they think that they, with no background in finance, but with a high IQ, maybe you decide that now you're going to be a stock picker. You're going to be choosing which stocks to buy, which stocks are the most promising, which will be the most profitable. Unfortunately, this is much, much, much more difficult than you might think. Warren Buffett himself said that over his career, he has known maybe 10 people something like 10 people who he trusts to be good at picking stocks. Think about it. He's been in like for a century almost. He's like, I don't know, 70 years. How long has he been investing? And he said like 10 people that he thought had really good skill at picking individual stocks. It is extremely difficult because the overall stock market is very profitable. It's great for growing your money, but the average stock in the market loses money. Many successful companies, famous companies that seemed like very hot deals at some point went on to really underperform and have poor results. So if you spend your time trying to pick stocks, you will probably fail because most stocks in the market get poor results. And then most of the profits come from just a few top stocks. But they are very difficult to predict ahead of time. Like 20 years ago, for every Nvidia and Amazon and Google, there were 100 other really promising stocks which went to zero or did poorly. Yeah. Today it seems obvious. Yeah, you should have bought Amazon 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, Amazon was just one of many companies, right? And it's very, very hard today to know which are the stocks that are going to be winners going forward. So picking individual stocks is very risky because the picks that you make are likely to struggle and you can get poor results. So instead of that, there's a better solution that we'll address a bit later. Okay. And then another related mistake is market timing. So people struggle with it so much. Like all the time, I get questions like, should I wait for the market to crash before I start investing? It doesn't look safe. Should I wait for a while? Or like, maybe, I think the market is going to go up now, so I should put in more money. Like people try to guess what the market is going to do and when they should buy and sell. But the reality is it simply does not work. So if, for example, you've got your life savings and now you would like to start investing them, but you say, well, I'm going to wait for things to calm down. I'm going to wait for like the perfect moment. How long are you going to wait? Well, of course, you're going to wait forever. I mean, basically, unfortunately, for the rest of your life, because things never calm down. Like for the past 10 years, every single month you open the news, there's something crazy happening. Things are never calm. Things never seem like it's a good time. And if you try to wait for the perfect time, it simply doesn't work. This is why Robert C. Merton, the Nobel Prize winner, said market timing is a fool's errand. So you don't deal with risk by waiting for the perfect moment. You deal with risk by things like diversifying, which we'll cover in a minute, by lowering the risk as you get older. Like there's different things you can do, but you don't deal with it by waiting for the perfect moment because that doesn't come, right? And then the fifth mistake, which I also wanted to address today, is more applicable for those people who are already retired. This is overspending in retirement. Because if you have a larger amount saved, it can be difficult to figure out like how much is safe to spend, right? Because we're not used to large amounts and living off our savings. We are used to having a salary from your job. So when you have just a large amount of investment sitting there, it's kind of hard to figure out how much is safe to spend. So this comes back to the question of the withdrawal rate. If you have a portfolio, how much can you safely spend, right? So the classic approach to the withdrawal rate calculation is to take your capital at retirement and you multiply it by withdrawal rate, and then you increase it by inflation every year, right? So this is the classic approach. So if the 4% withdrawal rate, you might have heard about it. If you have 1 million saved, you take 4%, so that's 40,000 every year, plus you increase it with inflation every year. Based on some research that was done based on American stocks and bonds, it is very likely you would never run out of money as long as you have a good investment portfolio, right? 4% of your money every year plus increase it with inflation. But when you actually dig deeper into the research, it's a little more complicated. It's all probabilistic because the future will likely be different than the past. And people use a range of withdrawals. Like some people take 3% of their portfolio to be more safe. Some people can take as much as 5%. And so if you're taking 3% per year, you're taking out very little. Like the chance that you will run out of money within 15 years is just tiny. It's almost negligible. Even within 30 years, it's very, very low. And then after 30 years, so if you're going to be in retirement for many, many decades, okay, then it gets riskier. Whereas, of course, if you're taking out 5% per year, the first 15 years are likely to be quite safe. But within 30 years, there's quite a big risk you could run out of money. And it's a very high risk that after 30 years, you're going to run out of money because taking out 5% day in, day out, that's a lot. So the question is, where do you land in there? And my view is that the answer is not a single withdrawal rate. It's looking at the withdrawal rate a little bit differently, right? So everybody talks about this famous 4% withdrawal rate, but if you just stick to it blindly, no matter what is happening in the market, I think it's a dumb way to do it. Because let's say you'll retire and you're taking out 4% of your portfolio, and then there's the biggest crash in history and the market is down by 60%. Are you really going to blindly just keep taking out 4% because that's what the math said? I mean, that is how you really increase the chance that you will run into the ground. For best results, you should have a flexible budget so that if the market does have a major crash, you can cut costs 10, 15%. You don't have, like, if the market crashes by 50%, you don't have to cut your portfolio withdrawals by 50%. But if you can even cut them by 10 to 15% or 20%, that really, really reduces the chance that you will run out of money, okay? So in my view, like the 4% rule is not the best solution because it assumes you're going to be inflexible. What you want to do is plan your retirement so you can be flexible, because not everybody can be flexible. You want to plan your expenses so you can spend less in bad years. And how do you accomplish it? You don't want to lock in high fixed expenses in your retirement. So this is what I'm planning for myself when I get there. I want to have a modest house or apartment where I have low mortgage or rent if I haven't paid it down. And I want low fixed expenses. I don't want a fancy holiday home with high expenses. I don't want to have expensive car payments because I cannot reduce them easily. So if I have low fixed expenses, that means I can spend a lot on traveling, on nice experiences, on helping my kids and all these other things. And if the market crashes, I can cut back and I can take less from my portfolio and wait for the market to recover. If I have high fixed expenses, if I have a big mortgage, high rent, expensive car payments and everything else, and the market crashes, I have to keep spending because I need the money. And I'm much more likely to drive into the ground. So I think this is something people don't talk about a lot. As you approach retirement, as you enter retirement, really consider, can I make my fixed expenses lower? Maybe you have a family home, you raised your kids there. Okay, there's a lot of memories. But maybe, it's just the two of you now. Maybe you downgrade to a house or apartment that is smaller and costs a lot more. It can make you much safer, it make your money stretch much longer. Maybe if you don't have a job, maybe you don't need 2 cars anymore. Maybe 1 car is enough. Right? If you can reduce those expenses, it leaves you a lot more budget for travel and other things, and it gives you that flexibility to stay safe. This is a really important point. So let me ask you in the chat, does this make sense? If you structure your expenses so that your fixed expenses are low and you can spend freely in good times, then you can also spend less in bad times and really have much lower risk of running out of money. Okay. PM says fixed expenses really kills you. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Very good. Hopefully that makes sense. Of course, there are many complicated situations, and not doesn't cover every situation, but that's the general principle that you want to keep in mind. Um, okay, and the sixth mistake that I wanted to highlight is overpaying for investments, because I see this a lot among my older students. I also see it among my younger students, but among my older students, this is something that is really painful because they often have a larger investment pot. So when you are paying a big fee to manage your portfolio, it really hurts you. And often it happens like when you are a bit younger, like in your 30s or 40s, you go to your bank and you tell them, please invest the money for me. I don't know anything about investing. And they tell you, sure, we'll charge you 1 or 2% per year. It seems like nothing because if you have 1,000 invested, like 2% per year is 20 euros, right? So you agree, and then for 10 or 20 years, you're saving and investing. But then you look at the results and you see, like, for some reason, your portfolio is not growing very much. And it's because, you know, that seemingly small 2% per year fee, it's actually like a huge part of the total profit that your portfolio has generated. And that stayed with the bank. And you're not earning as much compound interest, and it's really harming the long term results. This is where I always go back to a calculator, and hopefully this time I'll remember to switch back to the slides if I don't remind me. But okay, so uh, let's say somebody is investing for 20 years, and they're starting with 20,000, and they're putting 500 euros aside, and they make 7% per year. So in that case, they end up with 400,000 after 20 years, and 216,000 of that is investment profit. But if they're paying like 2% per year in fees, no, the profit is 132,000. So from 216 to 132, like almost half the profit is gone just because they were paying 2%. Even 1% is tens of thousands gone over 20 years, a big chunk of the portfolio. Okay. So this is something that I see a lot with older students because they have a larger portfolio and then they wake up to this and they realize I'm paying these huge fees. So I promised when I was sending out emails about this workshop that I would tell you where to look for the fees. I used to work in the financial industry. I've seen this a lot. If you go to your bank or advisor or whoever and you just ask them for the fees, sometimes they will tell you everything. Sometimes they'll be kind of a little bit sneaky, and it'll be kind of hard to understand the full picture of what you're paying. But for most investments in Europe, you can ask for the key information document. So this is how you check the fees. You ask for the key information document. All of those like insurance funds, like the unit-linked insurance funds, have to produce this. All investment funds have to produce this. So it's a key information document. You ask for this document and you look on the third page. On the third page, there's usually a table like this, which shows you the annual cost impact. Sometimes it's also called the reduction in yield. Okay, and here, this is a very good example. This is an ETF, a low cost investment, where it's 0.2%. But in some cases, I've seen it as much as 4 and 5% per year, which is just absurd. Like with some of these unit linked insurances that people buy, it can be super, super, super expensive. Yeah. So ideally, when you check your investments that you have, ideally you want to keep the costs under roughly 0.5% of account size. The best investments out there, we'll talk about in a minute, like ETFs and index funds, they cost like 0.1 to 0.2% per year. Okay, so this is a very, very important principle. Don't overpay fees. All right, and that naturally brings us to the next topic: how pension products can dramatically improve your retirement outcomes. Because why is it a natural conclusion? Because pension products can sometimes be very expensive, so you have to be careful with them. But if you choose carefully and if you find low cost pension or retirement products, they can make a huge difference because of a simple thing that is taxes. So if you have all your investments in a standard taxable account, and then when you take money out, you're paying like 20 or 30% capital gains tax, it can have the same devastating effect on your investments as if you were paying 1 to 2% in fees to a bank, right? So it's equally dangerous. And in some cases, it's unavoidable, but in most, like almost all European countries, there are some kind of special tax rules and some kind of special accounts and investments which make retirement investing more efficient. Now, this is something I cover in my full training program. We spend tens of thousands of euros on research in all the countries to figure out all the rules, but there's just like too many different rules. But in most countries, like in France, you have the PEA account, where you can invest for the long term without income tax. You still have to pay social contributions, but you can invest without income tax, which is a big benefit. In the UK, you have ISAs, which allow regular people to basically invest tax-free. You also have SIPs, which work a bit differently. You get like a tax reduction when you're contributing. So the UK has some great investments. Ireland, in Ireland, the regular investment taxes for things like ETFs can be a little high, but you can put investments into a PRSA retirement investment, and you can significantly reduce the tax burden. So most countries in Europe have some form of this. So what you want to do is find out what are the local investment vehicles that are available for investing for a pension. And then you want to ask a few questions like, what are the tax benefits in my country? Like, what are they? What am I getting? The second question is, how long is the lock-up period? Because usually, in order to get the tax benefits, you cannot just put in the money out and then take it out next month. Usually, you have to put it in for a certain number of years or until a certain age. Then the third question, which is very big, is what are the all-in fees? So subscription means when you put in money, do you pay something? Redemption is when you take out money, do you pay something? And then annual fees every year. Like for pension products, I can sometimes accept that it's more than 0.5%, but I would try to keep them under 1% per year. Look hard for any products in your market. More than 1% per year to me is like robbery. It really you should not be paying more than 1% per year for your investments these days. The tax benefits can compensate for fees, but only to a certain extent. So yeah, the fourth question is compare the tax benefits and the fees. If you're paying, like in Latvia, for example, where I live, there are tax benefits for using unit-linked insurance. These are the insurance products where you invest. But if you're paying 5% in fees, which is something that happens here in Latvia, no tax benefit will outweigh that. There's no point using those products, right? So you really have to pay attention to the fees. And of course, you have to make sure you are eligible for the tax benefits because not everybody is. You also have to think about like if you're an expat, if you're going to move to a different country, you might not have that benefit. In that case, you might not want to use that investment. So then the related sixth question is, will you stay in the country long term? Because for example, if you have an ISA in the UK, you put in some investments and you think you're investing tax-free, and then you move to Spain, well, all the investments you have in your ISA are now taxable in Spain, right? So you have to plan these moves carefully and consider what happens when you move from country to country. That said, if you can find some of these tax advantaged retirement investments, and if they do apply to you, I would absolutely use them because it can be a very, very big benefit. Okay. All right, and then so now let's look at the fourth point today, which is what are the best investments for your retirement strategy? Where do you put your money for retirement? As I mentioned at the beginning, this will be high level. Like we don't have enough time to be like country by country. These are the specific kinds of funds and everything like that. But there are high level principles that work pretty universally across Europe. And I usually explain it like this, like imagine that you wanted to explain investing to a 5-year-old. So the way I would explain it is, well, first of all, we want to make as much money as possible, right? Second, we want to keep our money as safe as possible. And third, we want to spend as little time and effort as possible because like most of us, you probably didn't save and work hard for decades just to spend hours a day, sitting in front of a screen and trading in your retirement, right? You probably don't want that. So make as much money as possible, keep our money as safe as possible, spend as little time and effort as possible. So to make as much money as possible, the long-term data is the strongest for investing in companies, investing in the stock market, because almost all economic activity in the world happens through a company almost all the money in the world goes through companies, and this is what creates the most wealth. So if you want to multiply your retirement savings, you invest in companies. To keep your money as safe as possible, well, that's where we invest in bonds. Those price swings, stocks swing up and down like this. Bonds swing up and down more like this. Yeah. So if we want part of our portfolio to be more stable, we put that in bonds. And then to do it as easily as possible, without spending a lot of time, we use passive investments, specifically ETFs and index funds. I will not get into the technical details, but the basic idea is with an ETF or index fund, you put in your money in one fund and it gets spread among hundreds of different companies. So even if one company has some kind of problem, even another goes bankrupt, it doesn't really affect you that much. It really, really reduces the risk, and you have a much, much better chance of getting long-term outcome. Yeah, ETFs and index funds make investing much safer. Not 100% safe. The market still goes up and down, but it makes it much safer because you're covering many different stocks, many different regions, many different industries and types of companies. Yeah. So that's the classic approach for retirement investing. You will have some stock ETFs, which cover many different stocks. You will have some bond ETFs, which lower the risk level in your portfolio. And that's basically all you need. Now, there's a few more things you can do, you can think about to reduce the risk in your portfolio. For example, a lot of the investment training or videos online just talk about buy the S&P 500. That's all you need. You might have heard about the S&P 500. That's American stocks, the 500 biggest American stocks. You can buy one ETF. It buys the S&P 500. That's it, right? But these days, a lot of my students don't like it so much because if you look at any chart of American stock prices, how expensive they are compared to the profits that the companies are actually generating. In America, stocks are really, really expensive, almost as expensive as in the dot-com bubble 26 years ago. Now, some people believe it's justified because the AI revolution is taking off and it's going to change the world. But other people think it's an AI bubble and there's going to be a crash. Hard to guess who is right ahead of time, but there is significant risk, right? But the good news is nobody is forcing you to invest in the S&P 500. Like if you look at other markets around the world, like Europe, Australia, and others, like they are not nearly as expensive. So a lot of people either build a global portfolio, or some people even exclude the US if they don't want direct exposure to the AI bubble, right? So if the AI bubble crashes, it will affect other markets as well, but the biggest impact is going to be in those big expensive US stocks. So if you want to avoid that, you can, right? It also has some drawbacks, right? If you avoid America and the AI revolution is amazing, then you make less money, right? But if your main concern is the AI bubble, you can significantly reduce that risk by lowering how much you invest in America. And by the way, this also lowers the 100% exposure to US politics and whatever Trump is doing, because if you're just investing in the S&P 500, like you're very exposed to America. Like last year, Trump was threatening to put higher taxes on European investors who invest in America, right? So it's another reason to kind of reconsider. And of course, this also exposes you to the dollar if you're just investing in America. So my view, like, I'm not making an investment recommendation, and many of my students have different opinions. Some of them invest in America, some invest in Europe, some invest globally. I personally invest globally. My view is that as a European investor, I don't want everything riding on Trump and those big AI companies. I want more diversification so that I'm better protected from various things that could happen. And the beautiful thing is that today with these ETFs and index funds, it's very easy to do that. And it's easy to do it, but you're not sacrificing quality. Because if you look at the research, like, for example, Morningstar Active Passive Barometer research showed that over the past 20 years, index funds beat as many as 90% of other investment funds where experts spend all their days trying to pick the best stocks for you. You just buy an index fund that invests on the whole market, and 90% of the time you got better results. So I'm really a big believer in this kind of investment. I mean, if you just Google index funds and ETFs, you'll find a lot of articles that talk about it. This is why Nobel Prize winner Eugene Fama said, "I buy the market through index funds." Warren Buffett said, "By periodically investing in an index fund, the know-nothing investor can actually outperform most investment professionals. And the way I put it is, with index investing, you get maximum reward for minimum effort. Now, of course, there's still some risk and you have to know what you're doing, but like to me, it's a no-brainer. Like if you're in your 50s or 60s, you want to invest for retirement, you are not an investment expert, you don't want to become an investment expert. Like you build a simple portfolio of like stock, ETFs or index funds, bond ETFs or index funds. Like you're super diversified. You can protect against yourself against various risks. It takes a few hours per year to manage your money, and you have a very good chance of a good outcome. So to me, it's a no-brainer. And specifically in most European countries, ETFs are the easiest kind of index fund that you can buy. They're called ETFs, exchange traded funds. Okay. And ideally, so if you have a taxable account, you hold ETFs there. But in many countries, even if you have like a pension account, like the PRSA in Ireland, you can also put an ETF in there. And that's like the perfect combination. Or like PEA in France, put an ETF, a low cost fund, in a tax beneficial account. That's a great combination. Tax efficient, low costs, and very likely to get you a good outcome. So at the end of the day, what does a retirement portfolio look like? I'm going to show you one example. It's not a recommendation. A lot depends on your country. You have to check your local tax rules. You have to check your age and goals and everything else. But just as an example, a lot of good retirement portfolios these days look very simple. Like a starting portfolio when you're 45, maybe 50, could be one global ETF, like the iShares MSCI All Country World UCITS ETF, where you buy one fund and it's investing your money in several thousand companies all over the world, and it costs you just 0.2% per year. And then as you get older, you start adding bonds, and maybe by the time you hit 65, you have 50% in this stock ETF, and you have 50% in something like the iShares Euro Corporate Bond 1 to 5 year UCITS ETF, which spreads half of your money among high quality bonds issued by companies in euros. Yeah. And this kind of portfolio can be more than enough for a comfortable retirement. Yeah. Okay, I've been talking for a while. Let me ask in the chat, like, is the concept clear of how we can use stock and bond ETFs to make retirement investing much easier? You don't need hundreds of different stocks. You don't need to be like paying huge fees to your bank. Often just one or two or maybe 3 or 4 simple funds can get you that result. Somebody was asking why bond ETFs? Well, ETF is a wrapper. An ETF can have many different stocks or it can have many different bonds. In both cases, you get diversification, so your risk is spread out, and you can do so with very low costs. Okay. All right, and there's one more thing I promised to show you when I sent out the emails, which is what are my preferred brokerages and for retirement investing. Now, in reality, if you're starting out with small amounts, I think there are many fine brokerages. And in fact, my recommendation is as your account size gets bigger, to diversify and have at least 2 different brokerages, because even though brokerages here in Europe are very safe, so these platforms where you invest your money, they are very safe, there is always some level of risk. And also things like cyber crime and cyber attacks can happen. An account can get frozen because of some administrative issues. So I like having at least 2 different accounts, and ideally 2 different accounts in different countries. Like Interactive Brokers is based in Ireland or the UK, Saxo is based in Denmark, or there's a Swiss branch. The Giro is based in Germany. Trading 212 has branches in the UK, Cyprus, and actually Germany now as well. Trade Republic is in Germany, N26 is in Germany, right? So having a couple of platforms makes a lot of sense. And then for those students of mine who are more wealthy, and let's say you have multiple 6 figures or 7 figures, then I tend to focus on brokerages which have a larger average account size. Because some of these, like Trade Republic, the average account size is like 15,000 euros. Trading 212, it's just a few thousand euros. So that means there's millions of people using these platforms, and each one has a small account size. So the platform is built to serve a mass audience, and the customer service is not very personal, right? If you have larger amounts, then typically I go for brokerages where you have a larger average account size. So Interactive Brokers and Swissquote both have average account sizes over 100,000 euros. For Saxo, I think it's a little under, but it's still close, right? So here, these are brokerages which are more commonly used by wealthier investors. Of these three, Swissquote is the most expensive. Usually, I would say maybe millionaires use it because they can get an account in Switzerland, and a lot of people like to have part of their money in Switzerland. If you are not wealthy, not sure I would use Swissquote, but I think Interactive Brokers and Saxo can be very, very good choices. Interactive Brokers probably the first choice for most people, with the note that it can be a little bit technical, a little bit difficult to use. Like sometimes I really, in our program that we have, we train people quite a lot on how to use it correctly because people find it very unintuitive. Okay? All right, but let me briefly recap what we've covered so far. So the big picture is if you want to invest successfully for retirement and you're 50 plus, the first thing is to realize that it's almost certainly not too late unless you're already like 65 with no savings. Then you think about like what will retirement actually cost you? How much income do you need? You can calculate, okay, how much do you need to invest today to get there? Or if you see that maybe you're starting with a modest amount, you can simply do some calculations and figure out like how big of an extra budget I could build for travel or other purposes. Then definitely evaluate the local pension products, see what local pension products are available, see if you can reduce taxes, and ideally put ETFs and index funds, excuse me, put ETFs and index funds in there so that you're not overpaying. Yeah. So if you can put ETFs and index funds in your retirement account, that can be like the ideal option for investing for retirement. Now, I hope that this takes you much, much closer to understanding that this is doable, because I think it's a big issue that here in Europe we're not doing it. Like when you look at American data, excuse me, something is in my throat. Hmm. When you look at when you look at American data, it's something like over 60% of Americans invest in stocks. And here in Europe, it's like 10 to 20%. And this is a big part of the reason why you meet so many American retirees traveling all over the world off of their stock investments. And in many European countries, that is a lot less common. And especially as the pension system degrades, this is dangerous. So I think we really need to change it. Now, the good news is, as we covered, starting at age 50 or 60 is not too late for most people to make a big difference. But the bad news is our time to preserve and build wealth is limited. So the longer you wait, every year that you delay investing, it does reduce how much you can achieve by retirement. It does make it harder, right? So I would sincerely encourage you, if you've been thinking about investing for some years and now you made the step of coming to this workshop, however you learn it, however you take the actual steps, do it. Yeah, find a way to do it and get started so you don't look back 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when you're even closer to retirement or in retirement, and then you have a regret that you didn't do it. The reality is investing is not that hard. Once you learn how to do it, it's pretty easy. The only challenge is in the beginning. I compare it to a driving school. Like in the beginning, it's confusing how all the pedals work, how the steering wheel works. Like there's all this stuff to figure out. It feels intimidating. Once you learn it, it happens on like automatic. It takes only a few hours per year. So the only real thing that you have to do is get started, figure out how to do it, and set up the system. But of course, there are a number of challenges that you have to figure out. Like, first of all, you have to figure out what strategy is right for your goals, your age, and your risk level. How much do you put into stocks versus how much do you put into bonds? Do you invest in American or European stocks? Do you invest in large cap or small cap stocks? There's all these different choices. Do you go for dividend investing or do you go for growth investing? So you have to figure out the strategy. Then once you have the strategy, you have to find which specific ETFs or index funds are the best way to execute that strategy, right? There's actually over 4,000 different ETFs available in Europe. There's a lot of long names. different types. You've got accumulating and distributing ETFs. You've got physical and synthetic ETFs. You've got Luxembourg and Irish ETFs. So it can be a little bit confusing to figure out like what is best in my case. And the answer depends on the local tax rules in your country. You have to think like, how am I going to reduce investment risk? How I will reduce maybe the stock allocation over time. What am I going to do to shield myself against things like the AI bubble? Like, how do I reduce risk? Sorry, my voice is really going today. Um, and then you have to find those local tax opportunities and special retirement accounts and everything else. And the final challenge is you have to find confidence in yourself for investing. And in my experience, for people who are 50 or 60 plus and they have significant life savings, this can be the biggest challenge because maybe you watch a video and you okay, here's a few ETFs, I could buy them, but it's your life savings and you don't want to make one big mistake that costs you 10 or 20%. And so you keep delaying because you're not confident that you understand what you're doing. You're not confident if you made the right choice of the fund or of the platform or if you handled taxes correctly. And in my experience, this is why people delay and delay and delay, and it costs them so much. So basically, that's why I'm here. So this is the part of the workshop where I make you an offer, which is what if I coached you one-on-one through every step? What if I showed you every step of the way how to do all this, how to figure out your strategy, how to figure out the funds to buy, how to figure out the taxes and pick a good brokerage and all these other steps. So I'm going to introduce the Index Masterclass, the program that we have for European investors. And today I have a special retirement edition. So this means there are some bonuses which we normally don't offer when we offer this program day to day. But before I do that, I just wanted to make sure and ask in the chat, are you clear on the plan? So the plan is I will introduce this program. You can decide if you would like to join, but it's completely up to you. And then after that, we will have the Q&A where I'll take the time to answer your questions live. Does that make sense? And hopefully my throat, my voice will keep going. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yes, clear. So hopefully we're good. Okay, so let me introduce the Index Masterclass. So this is a program that is built to get you invested. So whether you are in your 50s and you have some modest savings and you want to make them grow and add to them until retirement so you have enough, or you are retired already and you want to make sure the money lasts, in both of those cases, the idea is how do you get your money either out of the bank or out of expensive investments that are not working for you, or if you have some ETFs, how do you make sure that you're making the right choices and you have an optimal portfolio that gives you the best chance of making the money last, okay? And the foundation of the program is our Index Masterclass training. When you join today, you get access not just for yourself, but as part of this retirement edition, you also get access for your family. So a lot of our older members like to share the access with their children or their adult children so they can learn how to invest money as well. And a lot of people watch the program together with their spouse, which I recommend. Yeah. So you get access for you and your family to go through our step-by-step training. We've been doing this for years. We started very small 5 years ago, but now we're probably the largest and best reviewed investment training program in Europe. The way it works is you go in our program and I take you step by step through every decision that you need to make in order to put your money to work. So I walk you through choosing the strategy, picking funds, selecting a good brokerage, buying the funds without overpaying, and then long-term investing, managing the risk, reducing the risk as you get older, taking money out, investing during retirement. So I take you step by step through everything that you need to know. I have these short videos on every topic. You watch a video, you go take action. You watch the next video, you go take action. So just step by step by step, you go through the program and you put your money to work and you have a good long-term plan for until and in retirement. On average, the program takes like 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks. And some people do it much faster, some people take longer, but on average, it's 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks. And you accomplish 3 goals, which is you start investing to protect and grow your savings. you know how to make good decisions about your money, so that you know what to do not just today, but 3 or 5 years from now when something changes. And you become a passive investor for life. So once you have this system set up, it takes just a few hours per year. Even if you're busy or if you have a lot of hobbies and other things, it does not take a lot of time from you. Okay. Our members include people who live all over Europe. Walter, maybe you can drop the full list of countries that we support in the chat. So every single EU country is covered. The UK is covered. Norway, Switzerland, and a few other countries are covered as well. And you can be a local or an expat from another country, with one exception. As I mentioned at the start, unfortunately, we cannot help US taxpayers. Okay. But you can be from India or Turkey or Brazil or Japan or anywhere else. If you live in Europe, that's fine. We have among our members complete beginners, a lot of complete beginners, and we also have people with some experience. Maybe you have a few ETFs or stocks or investments, but you're not sure if you're doing it correctly, or if you're not overpaying, or if the taxes are right, or if the platform is good. And if this is causing you some stress or uncertainty, a lot of people with experience go through the program to make sure they fix all the issues and set themselves up right. Yeah. We have people who start with modest starting capital, their first 10, 20,000 euros saved. And we also have people who have 6 or 7 figures, and some people even 8 figures. So a very broad range of members have gone through the program. Many different professions, as well as retirees, like artists, doctors, programmers, musicians, teachers, hairdressers, anything you can imagine. Men and women, about 50-50 of aged from like 30s and 40s to 70s and 80s, even in some cases. So very broad range. And I'll share just a little bit of feedback from some of our members to kind of illustrate how the program works. For example, Charlotte is from France, and she said, after a year of learning about investing on my own, I still hadn't made an investment plan. I couldn't access US index funds from Europe and didn't know how to confidently choose an ETF. I finally took the leap and purchased this class, and it was worth it 200%. The content is high quality, the tools are user-friendly, and the community is there if you need extra detail. So Charlotte is a pretty typical example where people spend a whole bunch of time thinking about investing or trying to get started, but they hit various roadblocks, and then we get them actually going so their money stops sitting in the bank. Or Gonzalo is an engineer from Portugal. He said, I joined the program at 49 years old because I had money sitting in the bank doing nothing. The program was perfect because it addressed every angle I was looking for: ETFs, bonds, brokers, taxes, strategies, depending on age, you name it. Today, I consider myself an investor. Ovaldo, who's the senior director at a semiconductor company in Germany, he said, I regret not starting 20 years ago, but now I have a clear plan to reach early retirement in 12 years. So a lot of different people have gone through the program. Rodney, he moved back to Europe from living outside of Europe for a while. He said, when I moved to Europe, I quickly realized I was unprepared to manage my own retirement investments. Tom's training gave me the knowledge and confidence to reinvest my pension savings and build a simple, disciplined plan. If you're over 50 and feel you've left it too late, you haven't. I only wish I had found this years earlier. And we also have many retiree members like David Payton, who said, I'm 68, managing my own investments and living from the income they provide, but I had no idea how to invest for a decent, medium risk, long-term return. Tom's program gave me the framework to invest my retirement savings sensibly and confidently. Okay, so hopefully this range of our members of different ages gives you a sense of how the program works. And that's the foundation of the retirement edition. You join and you get this step-by-step video training where you go through it and you figure out the strategy and the funds and the brokerage and everything else, and you start investing. But there's a lot more that you get when you join today. So next up, there's a bonus that is special for today, for this retirement edition. We don't offer it every day. It's 12 months of live Q&A calls and monthly market briefings, where you can jump on Zoom and get 12 months of access to these live calls. Normally, when we offer the program, we only offer like 6 months of these live calls. So we give double access because this is a workshop only for my either YouTube followers or newsletter readers, and I wanted to do something special. So no matter what happens in the market this year or next year, you can always jump on this monthly call, hear what's going on, ask me all your questions. And usually people find this a great way to kind of resolve their doubts and stay calm as they're investing, so you don't have to like worry about the news headlines you're seeing. So this is something you get for 12 months. But this is a group thing, right? And you probably want some of your questions answered like more on an individual basis. So the second bonus that you're getting is that for 12 months, you get one-on-one coaching from me and my team of professional investors. This is also double the usual amount. Normally, when you join, you get 6 months, but for this cohort, we're offering 12 months of one-on-one coaching, which means you can ask as many questions about investing as you want, and you'll get an answer from a professional investor. Right now, we have a team of two. It's me and my colleague Chris, who's been in finance for many, many years at very senior levels as well. And you can draw on all our experience to like get clear answers so you can avoid expensive mistakes with your life savings. Now, to be clear, we cannot give investment advice. So I cannot tell you buy this ETF, sell that ETF. Okay. But I also don't want to. Like the goal is not to give you the fish, it's to teach you how to fish so you can make good decisions on your own. And usually our members love that. That works really well. Yeah. So when you join the program, you get not just the training and the monthly calls, but for 12 months, you can ask me and my team as many questions as you want, and we answer them. We help you think through the decisions so you can make better decisions on your own and avoid mistakes. And then you also, like I mentioned this earlier, but you benefit from all the tax research that we've done. We've literally spent tens and tens and tens of thousands of euros. Like I think we're getting close. We're going to get to 100 before too long on researching different tax rules in different European countries and working with tax researchers and experts. And we built our own tax portal. You get access to it. You can check 3 countries of your choice when you join, and in simple language, discover what are the tax rules, including what are the pension instruments in the country where I pay taxes so that I can reduce the tax burden. And around half of our members are expats, so we also talk in detail about if you move from country X to country Y, what does that do for your taxes? What does that do for your investments? And so you get not just the training and all the support, but you also get all this localized tax insights. And then there's a bunch of other benefits as well from joining the program. For example, we have an investor AI bootcamp to help you understand how to better use AI tools when investing and avoid expensive mistakes where you trust the AI to do things that you really shouldn't trust it to. There's a country-specific WhatsApp community, so you can connect with others who live in your country. And maybe the biggest bonus of them all is that you get long-term access to the program, including regular updates. Our earliest members joined the program 5 years ago, and they're still benefiting from the updates because brokerages change, tax rules change, like a lot of things change in the market, and we keep updating the program, and you get access to it. So you don't have to research what's happening with taxes in your country. We're following the news, and we can update you on that. And a lot of our members who don't want to be reading, tax websites and things like that find this very, very helpful. Yeah. So this is everything that you get when you join this retirement edition today. So you get our step-by-step program where you have access for yourself and for your family for 12 months, so double the usual amount. You have the live Q&A calls. You have double the one-on-one coaching for 12 months, so you can get all your doubts cleared up and answered. The local tax briefings, including pension products, Investor AI Bootcamp, country-specific WhatsApp community, and you have long-term access. As long as the program keeps going, you have access to all of it, including updates. Now, the classic way to sell courses online is now to say, well, the true value of all this is 215,000 euros, but I'm going to give you a discount. I don't like that kind of selling, so I'm not going to go through this thing where I say, well, actually, it should be 100,000. No, it should be 50,000. No, it should be, I'm not going to do that. But at this point, a lot of people have gone through the program and they have found the program to be very, very helpful. Because it saves them a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of expensive mistakes. For example, Valery Barishev said, I estimate it would have taken me 2 to 3 years to find all this information by myself. And when you're in your 50s or 60s, delaying by 2 to 3 years really reduces how much you can accomplish. Or Christoph, who is retired, said, compared to the money I've saved, the program membership fee is insignificant because he had a significant portfolio and his banker wanted to charge him 0.7% per year. And he went through the program and built his own portfolio equally good without that cost, which in his case was a lot of money. Judith said the index masterclass was money well invested. She's in France. She discovered that she had some very expensive like insurance products that she was using to invest for retirement. She switched to better products through a PEA account, significantly lowered the costs. It was a big benefit for her. Corina Simon from Romania said, even though it's an investment, it's totally worth it. Emma, a manager from the Netherlands, said, enrolling in Tom's course was one of my best decisions in a long while. It's structured, smart, and genuinely not boring. As a result, I finally started my investing journey this year instead of postponing it again and again. So, of course, I don't know your situation. I don't know what exactly, what your savings are and what you're going to come to the program with. But having worked with thousands of people in the 50 plus age bracket over the past 5 years, if you have either time, so you're in your 50s and you have time and the ability to put money aside, or if you already have savings, so tens or hundreds of thousands or more that you have to invest, but you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't want to make expensive mistakes, and you've been kind of delaying getting started, in my experience, you should really love the program. I think you will get a lot of value of it. It will make a big difference for you. And today, because you're either a newsletter reader or, we were kind of promoting this workshop to people who watch my YouTube videos or who follow me on Facebook, you can get this retirement edition with the double support and double access to the monthly calls for the cost of the regular Index Masterclass, which is 3 monthly payments of 556 euros. Or sometimes people want to make one upfront payment and then you can get a 10% discount. So in that case, with a 10% discount, it is 1,497 euros, including VAT, so including all taxes. Yeah. And to be clear, when you join, you get lifetime access. So there are no further fees, no subscription payments. We do think that we will in the future add fees for updating the program every year, but that's going to be for future members. Anybody who joins now is locked in, and you get lifetime access with no further fees, including all updates. Okay. And to take advantage of today's offer, you simply go and follow the link that Walter will drop in the chat. So let me just make sure. Yeah, I see Walter just dropped it in the chat. So you can follow that link. It's going to take you to our website. On the left-hand side there, you can choose if you're making the 3 monthly payments or the one payment with a 10% discount. And then on the right-hand side, you fill out your details. And you'll get access to our portal within a few minutes, which means you can start putting together your strategy this weekend or next month, whenever it's convenient for you. You have lifetime access. You can start going through strategies and ETFs and brokerages and taxes at your own pace. Yeah, so to do that, you simply follow the link that's in the chat. Now, I mean, realistically, if you took the time on a Saturday to come to this workshop, it probably means that you realize you should be investing for retirement. But I think it's completely fair to ask, like, is it worth investing in a training program like that? Is it going to be worth the money that you put into this, right? And I get that, because before you try out the program, before you realize everything that you're going to learn, you don't really know the value. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you're going to learn. You don't know how many mistakes you're going to avoid. You don't know how much this could help you reduce costs. You don't know the peace of mind that you're going to get by having all this knowledge. So it's hard to judge, like, is it worth it? But I have a lot of confidence with this because I've had thousands of people go through the program. I know that if you try it, like, you're going to love it. So for that reason, we take the risk off of you. We take it on us. You can go through the program and you have a 30-day money-back guarantee without any conditions. So there are no conditions whatsoever. You have 30 days to finalize your decision. You can join today, figure out your strategy, pick funds, select the brokerage, look at taxes, do everything else. If you genuinely feel that no, it was not worth it, it's not going to be, worth the money, just send us an email within 30 days and we'll refund you. We're in the European Union. It happens quickly. There are no hidden conditions or anything. Just send us an email even after 29 days and 23 hours and 59 minutes. That's fine. And we'll be happy to refund you. Because I know the program works. So I know it can be hard to judge, like, is it worth dropping this kind of money on a course? So I want you to be able to do it. to try it and evaluate it yourself. And if it's not worth it, we're happy to refund you. But most people find, especially if you're in this position where your retirement is getting closer, delaying is expensive, and you know that you need to get this done, most people find that this is super, super valuable. Okay, so that's why you have this 30-day money back guarantee. And as another way to help you not delay, because delaying really costs you, there's an action taker bonus today, which is that for everybody who joins during today's workshop, I will do a one-on-one consultation with you when you finish the program. We call it a graduation call. And this is also something very special. When I do my regular webinars just off of paid ads on the internet, I offer this, but I only offer it for the first 10 people because I'm protecting my calendar. But because all of you are either my newsletter readers or YouTube watchers or other people who've been following me, today there is not that limitation. So today is the basically only opportunity to lock in for sure, like guaranteed. If you join during this workshop while we are on Zoom, you will get a one-on-one consultation with me. So if you want to have a one-on-one chat and ask me all your questions and get my answers based on all my experience, you can lock it in by joining while we are live on Zoom today. Okay, we're going to be doing the Q&A, and you can go ahead and join in parallel. Just follow the link that Walter has in the chat. Okay, and when you do that, so last time, what is included? You have the step-by-step training. So just a few weeks later, you can actually be investing your retirement savings. You have 12 months of access to the Q&A calls and monthly market briefings, 12 months of access to ask me and my team all your questions, local tax briefings, including on pension products, the AI bootcamp, the country-specific WhatsApp community, and lifetime access to the program. It's all included when you join. The main link is the one that Walter dropped in the chat. If for some reason you need an invoice, maybe for tax reasons, for if you're buying through a business, or if you need to make a bank transfer, if you cannot pay by card, there is a second link. But be aware, with the bank transfer, you can only make a one-time payment. You cannot do the 3 monthly payments, okay? It's much more convenient for most people to use the first link and sign up and immediately get access. But if you want, you can use the second link, get an invoice, make a bank transfer, and join like that. Or if you need the invoice for your bank, that's available. And I see that Walter dropped the second link in the chat as well. Okay, and that's it. So that covers the Index Masterclass, the special retirement edition that is only available today. So right now we're going to move on to the Q&A. We have roughly 25 minutes, half an hour for the Q&A. While we are still on, you have a chance to join and get that one-on-one call with me. So you can follow the link in the chat and do that. In the meantime, press the Q&A button, put in your questions, and then hi, Walter. Walter is back. We're going to get through as many questions as we can.
All right. Hello. I am back. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So let's get right to it. So Anna was writing, I don't know the difference between stocks and bonds. Would someone like me be able to follow the program?
Absolutely. So I built the program because I know that here in Europe, like most people don't get taught investing at school or university. So you're probably good at your own profession, whatever it is, but you're not good at like finance jargon, right? And so people start Googling it and they find like all these different sources, a lot of American sources. Soon they have like 15 tabs open in their Internet Explorer, and they're like contradicting each other, giving you different advice, and it's just super confusing. So I built the program to cut through the noise. I start with the real basics. What is a stock? What is a bond? What's an ETF? What's an index fund? And then I build step by step on top of that, only including the things that you need to know and not including like all the extra complexity that is out there. Now, if you ever get confused, I warmly encourage you, reach out and ask questions. That is why you have 12 whole months of support. As long as you go step by step and then ask questions if you have to. I've seen complete beginners with no finance background be very successful with the program.
All right. And of course, a lot of people are still saying, kind of, we have really a lot of these case studies saying like, hey, I have this situation. Is it still too late for me? Like people in their 70s, in their 80s, people also in their 50s writing that, they maybe have small savings, but they're still kind of, trying to figure out, is it too late or not? I know you already touched upon this during the workshop, but maybe you can again kind of repeat in which cases it is really maybe too late to start and where it's still okay to
Okay.
join the program and also get started with investing.
Okay. So if you're already retired or in your mid 60s, 70s, 80s, the real question is, do you have savings? So if you have no savings, investing cannot do anything for you. But if you've got even tens of thousands, you can do the math. Like even like, let's say you've got 30,000 saved, right? So if you have like 3%, 4% inflation, that's like 1,000 per year in value that you're losing. If you've got 100,000, that's 3,000, 4,000 that you're losing every year to inflation. Just inflation. We're not even talking about growing the money. So yes, it does make sense for retired individuals if you have savings. If you don't have savings, it does not make sense. If you are in your 50s, like even as late as 57, 58, 59, and you still have time until retirement, then it also makes sense as long as you can put money aside and build savings. Now, if you have zero in the bank, don't buy the program. Don't use your last money to buy the program. But if you've got like a few tens of thousands, I think that would be kind of the point from which I would start. I don't want to put anybody into financial trouble. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, build your safety cushion first, build up some savings first. But if you've got tens of thousands that are just sitting there, losing value to inflation, I mean, these are skills that you need to learn, and the later you learn them, the more it costs you. So in that case, yes, I would say it totally makes sense.
All right, so Rona asked, if you have a lump sum for, say, an inheritance or savings account, would you suggest investing everything at once or over a period of few months? And this lump sum versus, investing over longer period, that's thing that came up quite a lot.
Okay. It is a common question, especially in kind of when you're closer to retirement, because a lot of people either have a larger amount of savings, or maybe you get an inheritance or some other kind of pension payout or something, and you have a larger sum. And this can be psychologically difficult because it's one thing to put in 100 euros a month for 30 years and then the portfolio becomes big. And it's another thing where you have, let's say, 100,000 and then you suddenly have to put it into the market and you're thinking, well, what if the market drops the next day, right? So how do you solve this? Well, there's the wrong way and the right way. The wrong way to solve it is to think, okay, I'm going to wait for things to calm down. I'm going to wait for the perfect moment and then I'll invest, because that never happens. And this is how people delay for 5, 10 years, because there's always something crazy in the news. Trump does something crazy, a war breaks out, there's always an excuse. Like, it is never the perfect time. But it doesn't mean you ignore the risk. So the way you deal with it is you have your safety cushion, so you don't invest everything. Part of the money stays aside for emergencies. You take the appropriate level of risk. So maybe you don't put all of it in stocks, you put part of it in bonds if you're older. And then, yes, you put it into the market. Now, do you do it in one go, or do you split it into 3, 4, 5 pieces? Purely mathematically, looking at financial mathematics, one lump sum gives you a better outcome on average. But psychologically, it's very hard if it's your first time investing. Just press the button and put in 100K. Very hard. So as a practical matter, I tell people it's completely fine to split it into a few pieces if it makes it easier psychologically, because the goal is to actually get going, not to do it perfectly. Because pushing somebody to invest a huge amount in one go is counterproductive. People freeze up and they delay. So I would say it's fine to split it into a few pieces if that makes you more comfortable.
All right, I see some program related questions, so I'll get those out of the way. So Roberto was asking for the family member bonus. Can this be shared with partner, not dependent children only, please?
Yes, so you can share it with your immediate household. So your partner, husband, wife, life partner, parents, children, not cousins, not friends. They should get their own, but immediate family, yes.
Yeah, so a similar question was from Frederica. Our daughter's 13 years old now. Will she be allowed to follow the program when she's reaching 18 years old so she can start a proper 40 years long-term investment?
So we've been around for 5 years. I certainly hope we will be around for another five. So the answer would be yes. The challenge there, so with a 13-year-old, the challenge is developing her interest in this stuff. Some things you can consider is listening to podcasts together with her. If it's like a podcast with somebody she admires and that person talks about money and investing, that can be a great thing. Maybe going to some events where people talk about it. Because you can always give your 18-year-old an investment training, but if they don't watch it, they will not benefit. So with children, the real art is how do you make them interested without lecturing them? And then once they are kind of curious, then of course, yes.
And then Alvis asked, is it too early to use this program if I turn 40 this year?
Absolutely not. So today is an exceptional event where we specifically focus on 50 plus, but our program member has, our youngest member was literally like 16 with the permission of his mom. He was a real enthusiast and he wanted to learn and he joined at 16. Most people join when they're like 30, 40, 50, 60. So that's kind of the most typical ages, 30 to 60 something.
All right, and then we have quite many expats in the webinar as well. So we have a lot of different expat questions, but I'm going to read the one from Olivia. Must your investment move with you each time you move countries for work? For example, work in Africa, but keep my portfolio running in Europe. And also, so this is like one example, but to kind of answer broader how the program can help expats. If does it work for expats, for people who are moving countries, living in different countries, and who are like, let's say, on the move constantly?
Yes, so this is a very common question. More than half of our members are actually expats and living outside of their home country. So we deal with this a lot. We have a lot of materials about this. So let me try and give the big picture answer. So the first and most important question for expats who are investing is the tax treatment. Everything else is much easier. The tax treatment is the tricky part. So you have to figure out when do you stop being tax resident in one country? When do you become a tax resident in the next country? And then what are the tax rules in the old country? What are the tax rules in the new country? And depending on that, sometimes you can leave your investments as is. Sometimes it's better to sell them. So I can give you a couple of examples. Let's say somebody lives in the Netherlands. They've been investing in ETFs for years and they want to move to Spain. Well, in the Netherlands, you have something called the Box 3 tax, where every year you're paying some taxes even if you don't sell the ETF. But if you move to Spain with the same ETFs and then sell them, Spain will make you pay tax on all the historical profits, including the ones you gained in the Netherlands. So in that case, it's often smart to sell, move to Spain, make new investments. On the other hand, let's say you're from Estonia and you want to move to Austria. You've been investing for years, you have a big profit. Now, if you move to Austria, there's an interesting rule. In Austria, you only pay tax when you sell on profit that you earned after moving to Austria. So in many cases, it's better to move to Austria, wait a year, sell, only pay a little bit of tax, and all those historical taxes you don't have to cover, right? So it depends which country you're moving from and to. And then, we in the program, we have like a checklist that you go through and you analyze this, and we have the local tax briefings to figure it out. There are other complications too. For example, brokerages sometimes will close your account if you move to a country that is not supported, but it is solvable. You can usually move the investments to a different brokerage. The tax aspect is the one to really consider. The other thing I would say about expats is a lot of expats delay investing because they're always thinking, in a year or two, I might move, I'm not sure. And it just kills their wealth because there's always uncertainty. And I understand this. Like I've lived in the US, I've lived in Latvia, I've lived in Cuba, I've lived in Spain, I'm about to move to Cyprus. So I know this very well, this feeling like there's uncertainty, you don't know what's coming next, the rules are changing. But you should not let it stop you from investing. If you do some planning ahead of time, it's all manageable. You just have to know what you're doing.
Then Mirko asked, can you talk about the advanced workshop? it seems to me that talking about real estate, ETF commodities could be in the regular program.
Ah, yes. So when you go to the sign up page, there's an option to add an advanced workshop. I think it's like 97 euros extra. The reason it's separate is that it's non-essential to get good results with ETF investing. And I try not to make the training more complex than it needs to be, and there's a big risk of overwhelming people. To be successful with ETF and index investing, the core things you really need is a stock ETF and a bond ETF portfolio. Those are the main elements. Now, some people want to get a little more advanced. They want to add maybe like a gold ETC, what's called an ETC, which is like an exposure to gold. They want to invest in real estate ETFs. There can be benefits, there can also be drawbacks. In the advanced workshop, I talk about that. I talk about things like factor investing. So if you're somebody who likes really going deep and understanding advanced stuff, you can add the advanced workshop. If you're somebody who's like, I'm worried that I will feel overwhelmed and I just want to cover the foundations, the main program is more than enough, and the advanced stuff is not essential. It's more for enthusiasts, for people who love this stuff.
All right, and then Nicole was asking, can you explain whether the money invested in ETFs can be accessed anytime in case there's an emergency and you need some extra cash?
Yeah, so here it's very important to understand two different concepts. You can access the money at any time. You can sell the ETF at any time. You get the money out in 2 days. However, you're going to get the current value of the ETF. So if it goes down, you will get less. If it goes up, you get more. So you have to understand that. And then the other nuance that we talked about today is pension products. If the ETF sits inside some kind of pension fund or pension wrapper, there might be limitations on how long you have to wait to get the money out. But that's specific to the local country rules. And yeah, we covered that in the program as well in our tax briefings.
And then Caesar asked, can I purchase the course under my company name and VAT number?
Yes, so you can go ahead and join and then fill out the invoice request, or you can simply fill out the invoice request and make a bank transfer. We'll provide a VAT invoice.
Then which one should I ask? The next. So I have a lot of case studies where people saying like have, let's say 20,000 saved, I'm waiting for inheritance, or like I'm 40 years old, does the program work for me? I'm 51, but I have a good income and I can set aside money every month. Is the program for me? Like, is there like one general answer how you could define once more who the program is
Yes,
for
so
and
so we
where it's, yeah.
we have three main kind of categories of people. The first category is people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who have decades ahead of them and they make compound interest work for them. So you have some initial savings, then usually you put money aside every month or every year, and then you have decades and the snowball grows and it gets really big. That is one scenario that we look at in detail. The second scenario, a lot of our members are 50 to 60 and approaching retirement. The time frame is lower, so you don't have quite as much time for the compound interest, but you can still make a big difference. And it's very important to guard your savings against inflation and make sure you have enough when you retire. And then the third category is we have retirees who come in with an existing pot. And we do cover all of those scenarios. So we do address all of those because we have a very broad and diverse range of members. Plus, both we have locals and expats, with the one exception that is US citizens and green card holders that we cannot help.
All right. Then I think it was Alex asking, so once I've paid, what does the help actually look like? Am I on my own, or is there any support provided in the program?
Yes, so you have a lot of support, and actually with this retirement edition that's available today, you have double the usual amount of support. Like for 12 months, we're on your side. So there are the main way that the support works is that whenever you're confused about something, whenever you're worried that you might be making a mistake or something is confusing, you drop into our forum, you write a question, and then either I or my colleague Chris, who's very experienced, we look at it, we research the answer, and we answer within 1 to 2 business days. So that means within 1 to 2 business days, you have an answer from a professional investor. for some people, like some people use this a lot and they get a lot more out of this than actually the program cost. Because if you had tried to hire a consultant with my kind of background, like having built a pension fund, like this would be outrageously expensive. So it's really up to you how much you take out of it, but the support is always available. We're very responsive. So as soon as something is unclear, you simply shoot us a question. Again, with limitations, we will not tell you what to buy. We will not give you tax advice. We will help you think through the decisions so that you can make a good decision.
And Claudio had a great question. Today, I have a financial advisor who charges 1.2% per year to manage my portfolio. Do you think I still need this professional after attending your index masterclass?
So without knowing who the professional is and what the benefits that they offer are, it's a little difficult to say. Now, 1.2% per year is really on the high side, even for good financial advisors. But let me give you a glimpse of what good financial advice would look like. And then you can judge if that's what you have. So good financial advice is not telling you which stocks or ETFs to buy. Like that is, these days, it's very like you would not pay 1.2%. Like that ends up being tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands just to figure out which stocks or ETFs to buy. No, like good financial advice would involve taking a full inventory of all the assets that you have, all the debts that you have, all your life goals, the dependents that you have in your family, the tax rules in your country, and help you come up with a plan across decades of different pots of money for short-term goals, for medium-term goals, for long-term goals, in different kind of accounts with different tax treatment. So like a comprehensive financial plan. And then over time, as time goes on, review the plan, see what is it changing in your life, what needs to be changed, and you know keep you updated and also kind of consult you when the market gets crazy and help you stay calm. That is what good financial advice looks like. Unfortunately, here in Europe, that kind of service is extremely rare. I would be guessing that you most likely don't have it. If you do have it, it can be worth quite a lot because if you do everything in a tax optimized way and you always have somebody to ask and they're taking into account your whole family and business and life situation, it can be worth a lot. 1.2% is a lot. Usually even good advice can be cheaper. But unfortunately, a lot of people are paying 1% or more just for some stock picking or ETFs, and the evidence is very strong that these advisors don't usually justify their fees. Like if all they're doing is telling you what to buy, usually it's not worth it.
And it's also, there are a lot of these robo advisors with fees close to 1%, which essentially just creates you an overly complicated ETF portfolio quite often. And that also might end up being really expensive if you calculate everything you pay in fees over, let's say, 15, 20 years or more.
Yeah. By the way, we still
Um,
have around 10 minutes. So anybody who would like to join and get that one-on-one consultation with me locked in, then you have 10 minutes to do that. You can just follow the first link in the chat that Walter dropped.
All right, then Paul asks if I want to deplete my pot over 30 years, how would you adjust the safe withdrawal rate? So that's when people have already reached retirement. So how do they think about not running out of money or going to zero till the last day?
Right. So if we had a crystal ball and we could predict what the future is going to be like, we could run it down to zero. Like there's a famous book, Die with Zero. It's not a bad plan, right? The problem is we cannot predict the future. So usually with financial planning, what you do is you kind of prepare for the worst case. So you are conservative so that even in the worst case scenario, you are very unlikely to completely run out of money. And this is where like the 3 to 4% safe withdrawal rate comes from. But there's a few ways, like if you really want to kind of run it down, there's a few ways you can deal with that. So first of all, if you have a big state pension and a lot of like medicine is paid for in your country and so forth, then running it down to zero by the time you're like 90 is not such a huge risk. Most people, when they're 90, they don't need a lot of spending money. So in that case, you might take out 5% per year instead of 3 or 4%. And you accept that risk because you know you might run out in your late 80s and your 90s and you don't actually care. You will almost certainly be fine. Another thing you can do is the flexible withdrawals that we talked about, where, okay, you start out a little more aggressive, but if the market is doing poorly, then you cut back. But in order to achieve that, it's important to structure your expenses properly, so that so your expenses are flexible. You could also take like the riskiest are like the first 5 to 10 years of retirement. If you do fine, if the market doesn't crash 5 or 10 years in, you're pretty safe usually. You could also do a thing like, okay, I'm gonna do 5, 7 years, then I'll see how much money I have, and I'm gonna splurge on whatever it is, big trip around the world, hopefully health permitting, or some charitable purposes. Or you could make a plan for, okay, it's fine, I will not die with zero, but there's charities that I'm picking and the money will go to them. So there's different ways of looking at it. It's very, very hard to die exactly with zero, basically. Either you're going to be too conservative and you will likely end up with a lot of money that you can leave to your family or charity, or if you're too aggressive, then either you get to zero too quickly or you will simply have to cut costs significantly at some point during retirement. So you make your own kind of personal judgment call of which is better for you.
All right, then in the Q&A, I saw like really a lot of buzzwords like Trump, AI, bubble. So I could probably find some 15 different questions about is this a good time to actually be investing? So how do people navigate these at least seemingly crazy times? Is it a good time to start investing? Should people wait? Is there a bubble? So how do you look at this?
Okay. So the way I teach it is this. If you try to invest and hope there will be no crash, it's going to be stressful and it's going to suck. Like, it's not a good approach. The way you should think about it is expect that, yes, at some point the market will crash, because from time to time it happens. Expect it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't worry about it. Expect it. It's going to happen. So you build a strategy that is built to withstand it. That is why you have a big safety cushion. That is why you have that mix of stocks and bonds, and you have a clear plan. If the market crashes, this is what I'm doing. And if you have that attitude, it's much lower stress, and you're going to be much more successful. Waiting for things to calm down is not a strategy. Things never actually calm down. Think about the last 5 years with COVID and Trump and everything else. And like, did things calm down? Russia invaded Ukraine. We had COVID. We had Trump elected. We had the Iran crisis. Like, do you think they're going to calm down over the next 5 or 10 years? So is it okay to leave the money sitting in the bank losing value to inflation just because the news are crazy? It's a very, very expensive thing to do. So instead of that, you want a strategy that is fine, even if the market does get crazy. Now, if you specifically are worried about certain risks, like you're concerned about the AI bubble, there's a lot you can do. You can invest, instead of large cap stocks, you can invest in small cap stocks, which don't have the big tech companies. You can invest outside of America. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to significantly limit the impact, but you cannot hope that you will completely remove the risk of a crash. So instead of fearing crashes, what I teach is preparing for them and having like a sane attitude, having an appropriate mix where you always have some assets that are much better protected, even if part of the market is going down.
Right, then Ina had a really great question. What happens in the worst case scenario, illness, etc.? Do my family members get what I have invested? So basically, how to think about inheritance and death and so forth.
Very good question. Also something we cover in the program, and a lot of people don't think about it, and then it becomes a problem. Yes, your family will get it if you have prepared properly. There's a big issue with so-called stranded assets, where people pass away and their money sits in some brokerage or bank in a foreign country and nobody finds out about it. Unfortunately, this can easily happen. So what I teach in the program is like preparing, like, for example, have a Google Doc that is shared with your family where they know where are my accounts and what is the inheritance process like, more or less, who should I contact. Now, you don't share your passwords, like your children are not allowed to go in and simply take the money when you pass away. You have to follow the inheritance process, but they should be informed about like where the accounts are and what the process is like. So that is also something we cover in the program. But basically, yes, it's your money. Your heirs will get it, but you should plan for it. You should inform them. And of course, if you have specific desires about who gets what, then you will need a will or a testament. And there's a lot of nuances there to consider, like forced heirship rules, and there's a lot of complexity that you can get into. But like the basics is just making sure your family is aware of where you have accounts.
Then Domenico asks, can I follow this course in more than 6 weeks if I do not have the continuity to give 20 minutes per day? So basically, is it 6 weeks and then stops, or how does that work?
No, I mean, the good news is it's self-paced. So you log in and you watch it when it's convenient for you. Now, I do recommend setting like calendar reminders and doing it like that. Um, you don't want to, delay it for months and then forget about it, right? So it is important to set some kind of, schedule for yourself and do it. But it's up to you. That the pacing is up to you.
All right. Then which one should I check? The next. This is actually a really great question since we're almost out of 10 minutes. Depending on how long you answer, this might be the last one, but maybe we'll have time for one more. And this one came from Gokberg. What would you suggest as a next step when you think you already reached an amount that you are financially free?
Um, that is a good question. I've gone through this exercise myself at one point, and when you start really looking into it, you discover that unfortunately, wealth tends not to last. Wealth usually disappears either in your lifetime or in the next couple of generations. And there's a number of issues. One of the biggest risks is concentration. So having too much of your money in a few stocks or a few investments or in one country, in one brokerage, whatever it is. Then the next biggest risk is overspending, not knowing how much you can actually spend based on your money. There are security risks like cybersecurity these days and scams and weak passwords and issues like that. That stuff needs to be addressed. Like there's a broad range of things to think about. But in terms of like the investing, really the key thing is diversification. That means diversifying among many different stocks, many different regions and industries, diversifying across multiple brokerages. A more advanced level is also diversifying across tax structures. So maybe not having everything in a taxable account, something is in a pension account. Some people use like a holding company. So once you have larger financial assets, I would focus on diversification and low fees. Because when you have a large amount, if you're getting like a 1% fee, it can be really expensive. Those are the key things that I would focus on there.
All right, so I think the last question could be a really simple one. Are there any rules for the 30-day money back guarantee? I saw someone asking that.
No, there are no rules other than, it's 30 days. So email us within those 30 days and you get the money back. Now, of course, please, if you get value from the program and you find it valuable, don't ask for a refund. But we trust your honesty. So if you go through the program and you genuinely regret it, just send us an email within 30 days and that's completely fine. Okay. So I see Walter just dropped the live bonus link. So that's where you can get the toolkit that I promised in the beginning, including the calculator that you can play around with. Otherwise, I hope you found this very helpful. Now, if you already joined the Index Masterclass, I really look forward to working with you. I think you're going to love it and get a lot of benefit from it. If you're still kind of struggling with the decision, that's completely fine. You can check your inbox for a link. The registration period for this offer with the extra support and everything else, it's open until Tuesday. So Tuesday, 3 p.m. UK time, we're shutting it down. Now, the one-on-one consultation, it's going away after we close Zoom. If you join in the next 15 minutes or so, we'll still honor it, but that it's going away after this. But the registration period with the double support for the retirement edition is until Tuesday at 3 p.m. UK time. So you can check your inbox when you make that final decision and join by Tuesday. Okay. To everybody else, thank you very much for coming. I hope this was hopeful and inspiring. And if you felt like maybe it's too late, hopefully you realize that it's not too late. And if you realize that it's not too late, I sincerely don't care that much if it's out through our program or not, but please don't let another year pass. Find a way to put your money to work, because if it's not too late today, eventually the day will come when it is too late. So the sooner you start, the better. Okay? I wish you the best of luck with investing and a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining. Those of you who already joined, as Tom said, we're really looking forward to working with you. For those of you who applied for invoices, I see there are a bunch of you. Those are going out in around 5 minutes because it's Saturday morning and our team has day off. So I'm gonna get to it right after the webinar. All right, so hope you found this really useful and we'll see you online. Have a great Saturday.
Bye.